opportunity is really on the shoulders of the many volunteers. It all gets lumped under heading of CHD. Every experience is unique and is different. To give voice to this population that often felt unrecognized and underserved. And I think that's the role of ACHA.
This is The 1% Heart, a podcast about the millions of people living with congenital heart defects. In this episode, we're going to discuss advocacy organizations making an impact on patient lives. Today's guest is a leader in congenital heart advocacy. He's a champion of CHD legislation and someone I personally admire, Mark Roeder, president and CEO of the Adult Congenital Heart Association. Mark has been in public relations and strategic planning since 1988 and has led the ACHA for the last 8 years. During that time, the ACHA has played a critical role in supporting the Congenital Heart Futures Reauthorization Act, not once, but twice. Before we start, here's my quick disclaimer. Nothing said here constitutes medical advice. These are our own opinions and stories. Also include a trigger warning as we will discuss medical-related problems. Listener discretion is always advised. With that out of the way, Mark, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dresden. I'm glad to have the opportunity to chat with you today.
Now, I will say, I worked very hard writing your introduction, but it took me a while to trim it down enough. You've impacted several causes, and I can go into detail on why everyone should listen to you, but you're a much better spokesperson than I am. What do you consider your expertise, and why should we be listening to you now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at this particular point in my career, I would say that my primary expertise is in nonprofit management. I have been very fortunate to be in leadership positions with various patient advocacy organizations over the last 22 years. And I've enjoyed it immensely, but I believe that the experiences that I had prior to then and the lessons that I learned prior to moving into patient advocacy were really set me up for success in my current roles. And that sort of takes me back to what I call my first career. And my first career was in corporate settings. I was able to work in public affairs and marketing for two very large corporate organizations that were both multi-billion-dollar sales organizations. And, I had just very interesting positions. When I was in public affairs, I was able to spend quite a bit of time lobbying on behalf of the organization at the state, local, and federal level. And so it allowed me to really get to understand the legislative process and how it really does vary in terms of local politics versus state politics versus federal politics. Then I also served as the community liaison from our corporate entity to individuals within the communities that we served. And as such, I was encouraged to serve on boards of directors for a variety of different environmental causes and charitable causes. And so I was able to sort of learn firsthand how nonprofits work while I was working on the corporate side. And then lastly, I would say marketing was sort of my first passion. It's what I went to college for originally. And so, I was able to rise up and lead very large marketing departments that it really helped me to learn how to put together strategic planning activities. It really taught me how to be able to focus in on constituent engagement and how do we want to communicate with different audiences and make sure that our message is strong to all those different audiences. And so again, I feel like I had a very fortunate sort of first half of my career that set me up and provided me with some good learning and skills to now be successful in leading this nonprofit organization.
I'm happy you brought up your for-profit experience, because something that stuck out to me was you have a lot of background in marketing, press releases, swaying public opinion. I am under the firm belief that congenital heart defects have an image problem almost. They are not well known, even though they are the most common birth defect. Has that been your experience as well? Has it Is it something that's more difficult to market than other causes because of the breadth of different problems all falling under one umbrella term?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And when you're talking about congenital heart defects, you're not talking about one defect and sort of one common experience for every patient. You're talking about dozens of different defects that all occur in different combinations. And so in some ways you could say sort of the every experience, while it all gets lumped under the heading of CHD, every experience is unique and is different. And every patient's journey is different. And then on top of that, you add in our organization is obviously the Adult Congenital Heart Association. And so it's only been the last few decades that people have really started living longer and longer with CHD and surviving and thriving into adulthood. And so even now, when you think about congenital heart disease or congenital heart defects, most people in the general public, if they are aware of the term, think about babies, they think about pediatric patients. And so, we have sort of the additional challenge with our organization in helping the general public to understand that, this is a lifelong condition, that lifelong care is necessary and important to help make sure that this population is again thriving to its utmost capacity as it continues to age.
And just to add some numbers to that, at a conference we both went to, the statistic was discussed that in 1988, 48% of CHD patients were surviving their first year. As of 2018, it was 95%, with more than 2/3 expected to make it to 65 or older, retirement age. So we are living longer, and that is a very recent development.
Yeah. And that's a great and very positive development. And what it means now is that, many of the other challenges that individuals have as they age, well, now our CHD population is starting to run into those challenges, those comorbidities, whatever term you want to use. And what's not known is, if you are running into sort of another quote unquote normal health challenge as you age, how does the fact that you have a CHD, impact that or amplify that? And that's what a lot of the, new learnings are as we continue. Many of our patients, if you will, that are in their 60s and 70s are to a certain extent sort of first generation, right? So they and their healthcare professionals are on the front line of trying to sort of figure out this sort of new disease course so that we can continue to learn and help patients of all ages as they
Good problems to have,
good problems.
in my opinion, as a patient, but problems nonetheless. You mentioned the Adult Congenital Heart Association and a focus on adult. Just for the audience that might not be aware, can you put into your own words what the organization does? I have my own sales pitch that I use very frequently, but again, you're the better spokesman here.
Well, our organization is now 26 years old. And we were founded by 4 individuals who met up on a listserv. And, basically they were 4 people from different parts of the country. They met up on a listserv. They decided to get together in Boston back in 1997 and just talk about the fact that they all had a very common challenge. And that challenge was that they didn't know anybody else like them. And they found it very, very difficult to try to locate and then connect with other people who were other adults who are living with CHD. And of course, remember, this was before social media and all of that, right? So trying to connect with people was very different. And they founded this organization with the primary goal of trying to help this patient population feel like it was not alone. And that continues to still be a sort of driving core focus of the organization even today. We still remain, 26 years later, we remain the only national patient advocacy organization that is solely dedicated to the needs of now the approximately 2 million adults in the U.S. who are living with CHD, as well as the medical community, the care providers who care for the population. And in terms of specifically what do we do? Well, we have a lot of tools in our tool. Defects, right? We do a variety of regional conferences and webinars. And on our website, we just have an abundance of materials that are really intended to help to educate and inform the CHD community. Our clinic directory, for example, on our website is utilized by more than 50,000 people a year to help them try to find care. Oftentimes, if people are moving, or if they're a college student who is going to be going to college in a different state, they have to try to figure out, well, where can I find this specialized care? And it's not always easy to find, right? And so that tool is important for that. We connect adults with CHD individually through our peer mentor program. Really help to connect folks who have similar types of defects or similar experiences. Perhaps somebody's getting ready to have a procedure and they want to talk to somebody who has been through that same procedure, right? So that's where our peer mentor program comes in handy. And then, we connect folks in much bigger ways as well through events in our communities, like our Walk for 1 in 100 events and whatnot. We fund research. We launched our research program in 2019. And thus far, we've awarded 18 research grants. We're getting ready to actually announce our next round of 2024 research awards within the next week or so. And the research that we do, again, is a little different. It's all focused on adults living with CHD and quality of life issues. For example, we have funded several projects having to do with anxiety, stress, cognition challenges, and sort of various neurodevelopmental issues. And then, I'll mention our accreditation program. We're elevating and standards of care nationwide through our ACHD accreditation program. And we now have 54 accredited centers in 28 states and in Washington, D.C. Last thing I'll mention is advocacy, right? Which is sort of my, kind of my favorite part of our mission. And it's especially nice to talk about advocacy right now, as we just recently had the passage of the Congenital Heart Futures Reauthorization Act in both the House of Representatives and as well as the U.S. Senate. And now we're just waiting for the president to sign the legislation. And, that's a piece of legislation we've been working on, and ACHA has been leading the way for more than 2 years. So it's a huge victory for our CHD community.
Yeah, Congenital Heart Futures Reauthorization Act, we'll call it CHFRA just for ease, is a very big deal. And I was surprised by how many people didn't know what was going on. And this was the second reauthorization, right?
Yeah, so the act originally passed in 2010. Then we went through the first reauthorization back in 2016-17. Officially, it got passed in 18, and now this is the next round of the reauthorization. And with this legislation, what it will do is it will authorize $10 million annually over each of the next 5 years for CHD research and surveillance programs within the CDC. And then one of the aspects that's new with the legislation this go around, which is incredibly important, is that it also mandates the Secretary of Health and Human Services to conduct an assessment of the current ACHD workforce capacity, and then submit a report to Congress on strategies to try to address the challenges. Why is that so important? Well, I mentioned we have 2 million plus adult CHD patients. The population is growing by 5% annually, and still we only have, roughly 500 ACHD board certified cardiologists across the country. That's an incredible workload that those individuals have. And as our patients know, it often means that they have long lists, and it's very difficult they have long waiting times to try to see a cardiologist. And then they oftentimes it's difficult to try to, again, locate one. And so we have a priority within the organization in looking and helping to bring forth, make the problem more known, and then, working through various channels to try to see what can be done to address the challenge.
I can attest to how difficult it is to find and maintain care. It's a problem for me personally, but it's been a known problem with your organization has pointed out for a long time now. Something that, it is hard to find care. There are resources available. I'm going to plug ACHAheart.org. If you're listening to this and you need to find something to help, something to read, something to give you a clinic directory, resources are all there. But, it sounds to me with CHFRA and with the documents on your website that relate to finding adult care and transition, the ACHA is more than adult heart care. I mean, it seems like you guys are the leaders in transition care as well. And I think I'm having a hard time digesting the obviously big divide between adult and pediatric care. Can you speak to that and tie it to what you were saying about why adult care is so important for the organization to focus on? The only organization that focuses on it?
Yeah, and I think that, as I mentioned, it's all about lifelong care. All right. And so there are very, very good care models in place on the pediatric side, if you will. And again, the pediatric work has been in existence for much, much longer, right? Now, as we're transitioning into more of adult care, we as an organization believe that it's critical that stay our primary focus. And that really also does include transition, right? We work as part of our accreditation program, for example. One of the criteria that we investigate and we look into is, does the center have a formal transition program in place? And it's, and so we also offer a number of webinars and educational materials about transition. And so, our goal, and when we talk about transition, we're talking about the patient. You're also talking about the parents as well, and other members of the family, because, that transition really does involve everybody. The role that mom and dad play as, that CHD patient goes from being 12 to 15 to 18 to 24 years old. Insurance, obviously they come off mom and dad's insurance at 26. Like everybody needs some help and assistance as you're going through that period. There are other organizations, other patient advocacy organizations who have really good, strong programming in place on the pediatric side. So again, with us, and it goes back to the roots, as I said, the roots of this organization were really all about adults trying to connect with each other. And so that's why we maintain our focus really on sort of, transition all the way up through all of the adult years.
Adults trying to connect to each other. I like that. And it was especially difficult before social media when you guys came about. I won't belabor the point, but especially when you're talking about transitioning parents, I don't think that's talked about enough, where parent is going from being the sole responsible agent for their child's care, agents, mom and dad, or what have you. And they have to empower their patient child to take over their own care. And those lines get blurry because some people might be ready at 16, are legally unable to take over. And some people might not be ready by 2021. So when you speak about transitioning parents, what kind of support should the parents be looking for? Is it pure mentorship, support groups, or?
Yeah, so we, part of our peer mentor program that I mentioned, obviously it's very much one-on-one, patient to patient, but we also have peer mentors who are parents as well. And so there's an opportunity for parents to connect with somebody else who has gone through, every situation, as you said, Dresden, every situation is different. And at what point in time does each patient, sort of feel that they're ready to take their responsibility for their own care. And obviously their care team, right, is part of that conversation as well. Their parents are part of that conversation. And so I think, when it comes to transition, the most important aspect is that conversations are taking place, right? And that there is the growing recognition that the patient needs to move in a direction toward being able to, again, take responsibility for their care, but doing so within a pace that works best for all. And it is like, there's a lot of gray area there, right? Because it is very different for each individual, for each family. The important thing is that folks are talking about it. And then, so you've got transition, which is the whole sort of long period, all the conversation. And then you have transfer. Transfer is the actual act of basically the patient moving from this pediatric cardiologist to now this ACHD cardiologist. And that's where it becomes very important for those care teams to be, to be in communication as well.
And what would an appropriate transfer look like at a high level? And I'm asking as someone who's transfers from cardiologist to cardiologist, where my insurance changed. I have to make sure my records get sent to the new guy and hope they read them.
Yeah. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? It is helping to make sure that there is a warm handoff, if you will, from care team to care team. And, depending on the institution, depending on the facility, right? Sometimes that's easier than at other times, right? I mean, if you are a facility that has a very strong pediatric program and you also have an adult congenital program, that may be different than if you're in care of a pediatric program that does not have a connection to an adult program. Understanding and navigating the insurance challenges and insurance changes as one ages is another important aspect. So, what's important is that folks know that there are organizations out there like ours, like CHPHC, which is the Congenital Heart Public Health Consortium, who have materials, information, and experts to just help folks as they're going through those stages of transition.
And a community of support of other patients, other family members.
Exactly.
So let's say I'm a patient, I'm a family member, and I'm now motivated by everything you said. I mean, you've outlined the problems and how the ACHA is doing its part. Let's say I think it's doing a lot more than its part. I think it's carrying a lot of weight for us. What can a patient, parent, someone who's just interested in helping the growing community, what can we do?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is I always, I would direct people to our website, which is, ACHAheart.org. That's where you can go and just for yourself see the various programs and opportunities that we have in place, the various ways that you can choose to engage, and then see, is this an organization that you think will be a benefit to you? Obviously, if people are so inclined, we are a nonprofit organization, and so we do rely on the generosity of our community to help make sure that we can continue to do our programming and move our mission forward. And there are, obviously, on our website, there are opportunities to either donate or get involved with something like our Walk for 1 in 100 events that occur across the country. And if you are somebody who really is excited about advocacy work, for example, there's opportunities. We talked about CHFRA, and CHFRA, fortunately, will be signed into the law any day now. But we will soon be then putting together, okay, so what are our legislative priorities for 2025? What are the next, what are the next issues that we'll be tackling? And so there's always opportunities we're asking people to do letter writing campaigns to their elected officials on our priority topics. There are opportunities for folks if they actually enjoy doing in-district visits and find those to be something that excites them, which I would hope that that's many in our community, because there's nothing better when you're talking to an elected official than having a patient share their story. That is what makes, that's what gets the attention. It's one thing for me to talk about facts and figures and all that, but when our community shares their stories, that's what brings the attention. And so, again, there's opportunities for folks as we move forward into the next year to meet with elected officials and either virtually or in person and share stories. And those are, we offer CHD connections in communities across the country, which are basically meet and greets, if you will, meetups. Just again, there's a wide variety of ways for folks to engage with the organization. So I would say step one is, visit the website, see if you like what you see there.
It'd be very hard not to like what you see on the website, but I'm incredibly biased as a big supporter of the organization and a big supporter of the Walk for One 100, which is all over the country at different times. Look at that on the website. It's a very easy way to get involved and meet the community in your area.
Yeah, the only thing I will add about our walks is that we're coming toward the end of the 2024 season. We have only a handful left for this year, but we will very soon. We'll be putting out our 2025 schedule, and it will be expanded. We're actually going to be moving into several new communities next year. So we're excited about that opportunity.
Well, I'm excited to see the new releases. We've covered a lot, but something I like to ask all my guests here is, what does CHD mean to you? Given everything you've personally accomplished, all the good and powerful results you've seen, but also all the more traumatic patient stories, the harder parts to deal with. At this point, what does CHD mean to you, personally or professionally?
Yeah, so, I do not have a CHD myself. Candidly, when I first heard about the organization 8 years ago, I knew very little about adults living with CHD, and I knew very little. I did not know individuals, right? For me, what it means is it's all about our patient stories. I'm now very happy in a way to say that, I now know thousands of individuals with CHD. And I say that because it's an amazing population. When you think about some of the experiences that many in this population have gone through, really from birth, and just how thriving and successful many folks are, and how much progress we have made. You provided the statistics earlier, Dresden, in terms of life expectancy now versus what it was several years ago. That's what excites me. This is a population that I think there is still so much to learn, and there's still so much opportunity to continue to improve quality of life and extend length of life. And things are happening. We just need to make sure that we can give voice to that population. And I think that's the role of ACHA. And that's kind of what enticed me to want to come to this organization, because I felt that I could hopefully help to give voice to this population that often felt unrecognized and underserved. And so when I think about CHD, it's really about giving voice to this population that absolutely deserves to have one.
Yeah, I could not have come up with a better answer. A largely underrepresented population that is growing, and we're very lucky to have someone like you leading our cause. And not to put all the weight on your shoulders, but we are very lucky to have someone like you helping us with the marketing, branding, and getting in front of people day to day.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's really all about, we have tremendous volunteers. We're fortunate to have I think we have built a strong staff team, but again, our staff team is only so big, right? Our real opportunity is really on the shoulders of the many volunteers that we have across the country. You obviously being one of the strongest, you really sort of carrying the carrying the torch for us in the Nashville area. And, through, our PFAB group, our peer mentor group, all of our various WALK committee members. I mean, those are the folks that are making things happen in communities. And they're the ones, we had, I think for the latest round of CHFRA, for example, we had more than 700 people who sent letters to their elected officials, right? And, my hope is that by the time it comes for the next reauthorization of CHFRA, that's, 70,000 letters, 70,000 people that are sending. Sorry, that's what we want to see, is continued growth as we move forward. And candidly, it's individuals like you that are really doing the heavy work in your community.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to say something now. Is there a way that we can just at least mention Alan's contribution to CHFRA and legislation?
Yes. I think we started our patient and family advisory board in 2021. And, one of the first members of our PFAB, was Alan Sable. And Alan has been involved with the organization long before 2021. He, in fact, he made visits to DC many times. I was fortunate to accompany him on some of those visits. He was somebody who just loved advocacy. Was very, very involved he lived in New York City, was very, very involved with the legislative scene in New York. And really was the co-chair of our public policy committee within the PFAB. And unfortunately, he passed away just a couple of days before we found out that CHFRA had passed in both the House and the Senate. And I think he passed away a couple of days after it had officially passed. And it's one of those very difficult things, because there is nobody who would have celebrated this passage more than Alan. And but I think he knew. Yeah, I think somehow he knew, and I think I would like to think that he is celebrating its passage. And then obviously the research programs, the surveillance programs that it will fund through CDC, will sort of be a living legacy, if you will, to him and to the work of so many advocates who have pushed for this legislation through many years.
Thank you for saying that. We cannot talk about CHD public policy and legislation without mentioning that man. So thank you for everything. And that was Mark Roeder, President and CEO of the Adult Congenital Heart Association. You can learn more about the organization and find the resources we discussed at ACHAHeart.org. That's ACHAHeart.org. And remember, if you have any questions, comments, or anything else, please reach out through our website, 1percentheart.com, all spelled out. You can email support@1percentheart.com or message us on Instagram at the CHD podcast. Yes, we were able to get that. Thank you all for listening. Talk to you soon.